I can't sleep when I lay in bed. Too much thinking in my head. I don't know what to do anymore.
Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today we're going to be talking about vision loss. I have two guests on the show that is from Society for the Blind, and they have a lot of great information to share. Stay tuned. Thank you, Greg and Sherry, for being a guest on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start off by you guys introducing yourselves and what is your role at Society for the Blind.
Well, thank you for having us on the show, Jesse. I'm Sherry Ressler, and I'm the Executive Director at Society for the Blind.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for having us. My name is Greg DeWall. I'm an orientation and mobility instructor at Society for the Blind, and I also am involved in the youth programming with education and careers.
Oh, nice. Tell me a little bit about Society for the Blind.
So Society for the Blind is actually one of the Sacramento region's longest running nonprofits. We're about 63 years old, and we were founded back in 1954 essentially to be a more social gathering place for people who are blind. And then over the years, as more education and possibilities started emerging, Society for the Blind evolved into being a training and teaching facility. And today, Society for the Blind is the Northern California region's only comprehensive training center with a low vision clinic, offering myriad services for folks who are low vision and blind to enable folks to learn, discover, develop their full potential.
Oh, nice. What type of resources are available to the community from Society of the Blind?
So we offer a range of services and programs. Greg's going to tell you a little bit about some of the educational programs since he's one of our key instructors.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I'm an orientation and mobility instructor, and what that is teaching people how to travel with a long white cane. Kind of simply put, how do you get from point A to point B safely and efficiently? And that can involve everything from learning how to use your phone for transportation routes, walking routes, looking up addresses. We also teach adaptive technology, which, whether it be a cell phone or a computer, these devices are accessible to those who are experiencing vision loss, and we want to teach them how to use it so they can be productive in school and in the workplace. We also teach Braille, which is our communications class. If you're not able to read print, you could read Braille and remain literate, or get Braille into the school system so that kids can keep up with their peers and stay at the same reading level as their peers. And then we also have daily living skills, which, everything that you do to manage your home and your day-to-day life, techniques and skills for cooking, cleaning, managing your budget, being able to locate things throughout your house, little strategies and techniques for all that. So that's kind of the base of the classes that we teach, but our services go beyond that. We have weekly support groups on Mondays and Tuesdays during our lunch hour, where we discuss blindness related issues with our clients and anybody from the community who wants to come in and participate in those. Our senior program also has a once a month support group on the third Thursday of every month. It's really a kick to watch all these seniors, 40, 50 of them, in the conference room every third Thursday of the month, getting along, talking about different discussion topics. Our Senior Impact Project also has what we call an 8-day retreat.
Nice.
Now, an 8-day retreat is kind of a crash course to blindness. Over these 8 days, you're getting introduced to all those areas of instruction that I mentioned, the orientation and mobility, daily living, Braille and communications, as well as technology. You're getting introduced to all these services that are available, and we'll get more into it later, but we also have our low vision clinic that is sometimes people's first stop when they come to Society for the Blind. And we also have our store. You could call in and order stuff from our store, but if you're somebody who likes to get your hands on things, figure out how things work, these are all items and tools that some of us use in our home, or people in the blind community use in their home, to adapt things to make their daily lives a little bit easier, whether it's a talking kitchen scale or a talking watch, or maybe if you're a card player, you could come in and get a deck of Braille cards.
Nice.
Really, anything that you could apply to your daily life, we probably have in our store that could help you if you're blind or low vision.
One of the things that I was impressed with when I came out to you guys' organization was, I was given a tour, and I was able to see some of the people there cook. Yeah, and it was smelling good, by the way. And I was really, really impressed by that because it was a real kitchen.
Right.
Real kitchen, real stove. And so I think that's important, that people know that for these type of services, that people still live their lives just as if they had their vision.
That is something that I think often surprises folks when they come through Society for the Blind, is that our kitchens, as you said, have all the same appliances that any of us have in our kitchens. So it isn't that there's a bunch of new appliances or things people need to learn. And a lot of it is that folks learn how to do it in what we say non-visually.
Yeah.
And so you're paying attention. You have to be very attentive in the kitchen. We've all probably cut ourselves, even though we're sighted, with a knife. And so again, it's about, am I paying attention? How am I using things? For some of the appliances, we label them with what we call bump dots, so they're raised, and you may be on the on button and the off button. In other cases, as Greg was saying, we label things with Braille.
Yeah.
So again, you're able to turn appliances and other things on and off. And there are some little tools and devices that can help. You put a device inside of a coffee mug, so as you're pouring hot liquid in there, it'll whistle. So again, you're not going to burn yourself pouring hot beverages, things like that do help with some safety. But generally in the kitchens, it's all regular, everyday kitchen products.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do want to ask you, Greg, how long have you been working for Society of the Blind? Because you're very informative. I mean, you do a lot. You just shared a lot of good information. I'm just curious, how long have you been working, and how long have you been teaching in your role at Society for the Blind?
Well, I got hired as an instructor in October of 2010, so I've been there 7 years. And over that time, my role as an instructor has changed. I kind of used to be a jack of all trades, where now I've narrowed my scope down to specifically orientation and mobility.
Nice.
My passion is, helping others improve their quality of life, and I like to do that through teaching people how to travel, so that they could get to school and they could further their education, or they could get to their workplace, or go visit family in Southern California or across the country. It doesn't matter. I want to help them learn how to do that.
That's awesome. I have an uncle, and I think I was just sharing a little bit with you, that he's legally blind, and his daughter, which is my cousin, about 3 weeks ago, she had a medical condition where he had to fly out there. And this was his first time ever flying an airplane without support from the family. But, he was really motivated and he was determined to do it. And, he was able to get out there successfully. And so, I think that's important too, to highlight that, people that, may lose their sight, they can still travel and do things as if, people like us that have our sight. Because I think when, something like this happened, people just automatically think that their life is over, there's no hope, when in fact it's the totally opposite.
Well, and part of what you're referring to is we often feel like we're a burden to friends and family, and people are not informed, like you're saying, and they don't know that there are services available at the airport.
Yeah.
The hotels, if you're traveling and staying in a hotel, they're informed enough to know how to help you get to your room. They know how to communicate with you. So people are trained, and often places like airports, they have services that are available to help you get from the ticket counter to your gate, or from the gate to get your luggage and then out to the taxi stand or out to the pickup point where your family might pick you up. All those services are available, and coming to places like Society for the Blind, if you haven't been educated on that yet, you certainly will be before you leave.
I love it. I want to piggyback on something you said, because you kind of mentioned about being a burden. Now I know, like I give you an example, like my uncle, for example, he's very independent. He lives in his own apartment, and sometimes we, as the people like myself who has their vision, when we see people out in the community who has a vision loss, our first train of thought is, oh, let me go and help them. Let me help them across the street. But in fact, sometimes people are independent and they don't want that help. It's actually offensive to some people like that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up. What's offensive is usually the approach that people take when offering the help.
Okay.
When help is assumed, that's usually when it becomes offensive. People in the blind community, it's the question of, can I help you or do you need help? That's usually not a bother. But often, and us in the blind community, we talk about this a lot. I'll be standing at a corner and someone will come up and grab my elbow and start walking me across the street.
Wow.
Well, they might not know, I didn't want to go that way.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't just fall out of the sky. So it's when help is assumed that it's offensive. You know, if someone is walking down the street, and just such as myself, if I'm walking down the street with my cane or someone's a guide dog user, if I'm looking confident and I know where I'm going, chances are I don't need help.
Yeah.
But if you see somebody turned around in an alleyway or you know, a walkway or a driveway, simply asking them, is there something I can do to help you? That's not generally going to bother them.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's when help is assumed that borders on the line is offensive.
Good information. What are some of the challenges or obstacles people face in admitting that they're losing their sight?
The biggest challenge is societal pressures. You know, in the blind community, we often talk about the misconceptions that come with losing your vision and being marginalized and being told that your life is limited due to your vision loss. And so naturally, people, when they notice and they start admitting to themselves that they have vision loss or recognizing that their vision is changing, they're hesitant to open up and tell their family members or their friends, whether it be at church or you know at their weekend events, whatever it is their lifestyle gives them. You know, they have trouble admitting it because they're afraid of the reaction that they'll get, the ableism kind of attitude that comes from, or what we call the hierarchy of sight.
Yeah.
Somebody feeling superior because I have more sight than you.
Yeah.
So it causes people to stay bottled up. And the difficult part about that is the longer you go without admitting or kind of coming out and you know, admitting that you're losing vision, that's the longer you go without having a higher quality of life.
Exactly.
You know, admitting and coming to places like Society for the Blind or Department of Rehabilitation, that's the first step you take in establishing control again of your life and regaining some independence.
Yeah, wow. So what do you guys think, what are some of the leading causes of someone losing their vision?
So there are 4 leading causes of blindness, and 3 of them actually affect people 55 and older. So we have what's called age-related macular degeneration, and that's the leading cause of blindness for folks 55 and over. And that's, again, it's a process of vision loss that is over many years. There are no cures currently for any of these causes of blindness. There are treatments that help to slow the progression of the disease. So we have age-related macular degeneration, glaucoma, and cataracts. And then the fourth is diabetic retinopathy. And that is a degenerative eye condition that generally emerges after an individual who has either type 1 or type 2 diabetes, who's had the illness for 10, 15 years, starts to experience some vision loss, and has a lot to do with the blood cells weaken.
Yeah.
And so interestingly, for diabetic retinopathy, that is a leading cause of blindness for individuals 20 to 40.
Wow.
And that really has a lot to do with, we've seen a huge spike in type 2 diabetes over the last decade or so. And so that really affects people in the prime of their working years.
Yeah.
So those are the four leading causes. And certainly sometimes children are born with genetic conditions that they could be born blind, and or over their childhood to young adulthood, they progressively lose more vision. So then again, there are hereditary conditions, and then there are also some folks who lose their eyesight due to tragic accidents and things like that.
Yeah. So are there any, how can I rephrase this? How is a person affected mentally when they lose their sight, when all their lives, having their
Sure.
vision, and then all of a sudden this happened? How do you think that actually affect them mentally?
So it's, as we talk about it, it's a catastrophic disability, because particularly when all of your vision goes pretty rapidly, you literally have to relearn how to go about doing every part of your daily life.
Yeah.
And so it is a very scary time. And when folks come into Society for the Blind who've experienced a really rapid loss of vision, or it's been a series of years and then suddenly it really goes, they come in and they are very fearful.
Yeah.
They often tell us, and in the support groups that Greg runs, just how their life has gotten smaller and smaller. They aren't doing those social things. They're not, maybe they're thinking they have to leave their job. And so, their world and their life as they know it feels like it's coming crashing down. And that's where the value of coming to a place like Society for the Blind becomes so valuable. All of our instructors are blind or have low vision. They have all walked this journey.
Yeah.
And so can be that source of emotional support as well as education. And since all of our instructors are using all the techniques and skills they're teaching,
Yeah.
folks really know they can believe in it, and it helps them to build their trust. Greg, I'm sure you have more you can certainly add to that as far as how it affects somebody.
Well, and as Sherry said, all of our instructors are blind. It's one thing to be told how to do something, but when you're being instructed by somebody who practices what they preach,
Exactly.
you buy into it
Yeah.
a little bit more. And we have a stellar staff, and all of us believe that mentorship and resources is a critical part to the rehabilitation process. There's lots of services out there for people who are visually impaired, but the two most critical things in the beginning is getting involved in the blind community and coming to Society for the Blind, talking to other students, talking to the instructional staff, coming to the support groups, getting around competent individuals who are highly qualified, educated, they live their own independent lifestyles. I myself, I'm happily married. I have a 4-year-old son, a 4-week-old daughter. I've traveled the world. I'm educated, and I'm only able to do that because of places like Society for the Blind, where you go and you get your training, and you get involved with other people in the blind community. So places like Society for the Blind, they're irreplaceable. There's no other way to get services like that without going to a training center.
I definitely agree, because the quality of life is definitely is there. We have a guy that volunteers for one of our programs, and he has vision loss, and he is one of our best volunteers. He comes faithfully. He answers the phones, he checks messages. He does it all, and you wouldn't even be able to tell, he was blind unless you were looking at his stick or something. But he's very intelligent, very well spoken, and just a very, very productive member of society. So I think that's very important to know. When people watch programs like this, especially this program, they may know somebody who, are losing their vision or have low vision loss. Well, I hope that this particular program gives them hope and let them know that you guys' agency exists for them and their services is out there.
Absolutely.
So that's important. How is blindness rehabilitation different than any other type of rehabilitation?
Well, this is slowly something that's kind of changing in the blindness as well as in the deaf rehabilitation communities. And where it's different than other, what we call general rehabilitation, is blindness and the loss of hearing, that's a sensory loss. It's not a physical loss like an amputee or becoming paraplegic or quadriplegic. While those are certainly worth rehabilitating, those are more physical rehabilitation processes. Where with blindness, you're rehabilitating the mind, as Sherry said earlier, to do your daily tasks a different way. The result is the same, but the alternative techniques that we use in the kitchen or traveling with the long white cane to get down the block or through a mall or through an airport, it's different than how we used to do it before. Yeah. So in a sense, we're rewiring our mind to process information non-visually.
Yeah.
And that's why within the Department of Rehabilitation, blindness field services is considered specialized services because it is a different skill and a different technique than your standard rehabilitation process.
Yeah. So I know that people kind of learn on different levels or at their own rate when you guys are teaching them. Can we talk about a success story of someone that you guys may have came to a support group or got services from Society of the Blind that may have, been not as optimistic, but as they started receiving you guys' services, that they just start to blossom? Do you guys have any?
It's probably like, which ones do we pick?
Right.
There have been so many.
Because this is those services.
I'll share about one of our seniors,
okay,
and then I'll have Greg share one about the working age adults, because we cover the full age spectrum. So we had an elderly woman who had a pretty rapid loss of vision, and she was also diabetic. And the day came when she could no longer read the blood glucose measuring, and on that day, her world fell apart, because her sense of, she ran the household, she was able to take care of herself, and suddenly she couldn't read her glucometer any longer. And she stopped going out, she stopped playing bridge, she stopped going, anywhere, and fell into a very deep depression.
Yeah.
And they happened to live up in Orland, and her husband finally basically went through the yellow pages and found us.
Wow.
And they drove down to Society for the Blind, and they enrolled in the Senior Impact Program retreat. And because they traveled so far, he actually participated in it as well.
That's awesome.
And so they went through the program, and not unlike other seniors who go through it, the first couple of days were fear-filled, because it's all new. You're trying to figure out how to navigate your world with a white cane. But by about the end of day 3, suddenly she started laughing.
That's awesome.
And she started realizing, oh, I can do this. And then we introduced her to a talking glucometer. And so somebody who's blind, who also has diabetes, can actually get their reading, and it's spoken out loud to them. And so she found out there were some medical devices that could help. She learned how to navigate in a kitchen again, so she could start doing cooking.
That's awesome.
So all those things, all those pieces and parts that Greg was talking about, she was able to do, and really reclaim her life again, and feel like she was a full partner again in her marriage, and they were able to travel and see their children. So I would say that is one of many success stories of somebody who was well into her 70s.
That's awesome.
And came around. So Greg, I'll let you share another one.
And there's certainly so many to choose from. I could talk about one that's kind of a homegrown talent. And kind of going back to something that we mentioned earlier, and that is learning from other blind people and getting immersed into the blind community. We have somebody who's now an instructor of ours who had attempted to get training in other places, but still struggled a little bit, and then he discovered Society for the Blind. His talent started to show through. He started developing, becoming more comfortable with his blindness, and just before he graduated our program, we asked him to kind of stay around as a volunteer and start getting involved in another program that we call Access News, which is a telephone reading service. And because he was kind of a technology wizard, he took over the Access News program. And now he's one of our main technology instructors, as well as kind of a substitute orientation and mobility instructor. So we kind of developed him, and we held on to him. And another one that I would like to speak of is a gentleman that I actually met 20 years ago when I went through my own blindness training at an agency in the Bay Area. And he kind of continued to struggle over the years, and he's been blind a long time, but he realized that he still wanted more training. And so he came to Society for the Blind and was welcomed with open arms, and we started building his confidence and kind of stretching him and challenging him a little bit. And again, this is where learning from other blind people can often make the difference. Qualified, confident blind people who practice what they preach, they can't use the excuse of, well, how do you know? You're not blind. And that's often something you hear when a blind person has a sighted instructor. Now, there's plenty of good sighted instructors out there, but when your instructor is also blind, you can't use that excuse.
Exactly.
And so, we're often not questioned because our students know that we practice what we preach. And so if we give our students an assignment, they take it seriously, and they feel rewarded in the end when they come through having success. And now this gentleman has just completed my O&M program. He's going back to massage school, and he's looking to further his career in that field.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How important is it for people that have their vision to be educated on some of the information that you guys are currently sharing? How important, because if you have a family member, like you talked about the lady's husband who went through the class or whatever with her, how important is that for people like us who has a vision to be informed on some of the issues, some of the stigma, some of the education that's out there, some of the devices out there? Is that important for us to know?
Absolutely, it's important. And I'd say it's critical for family members, and I'll speak to that first, then I also want to speak to it from an employment perspective. For the family members, when an individual is first losing their sight, they can become very dependent on their family to get around, to do various things. And then as they develop those skills and they get more confident, it's really important that when they leave the teaching center, they go home and they start actually engaging those skills and practices at home in their community. And if we as sighted family members continue to want to step in and do things for folks, we're sort of, we're going to not help those lessons, seed as well. And so it's really about learning to be interdependent. And for the person who has the vision loss, they know when they need assistance, and their instructors teach them about when it's smart to ask for help and when you should push to try to do it on your own. And then it's important for us who are sighted to be mindful and to say, may I be of assistance? And if it's no, then step aside.
Yes.
Learn to be supportive, reinforce some of the lessons and things that are being learned. So I think, we live in such a visual world. And so it's really important to learn and observe and pay attention so that we can be that support in an interdependent way. I think the other part that's important is around the field of employment, because there is such a high unemployment rate of around 70% for folks who are blind and low vision. And yet we know that all this potential is there. And when you hear, as Greg talked about, these are folks who have relearned how to do everything. So there is a level of perseverance, and also from an employment standpoint, folks who know how to problem solve probably better than any of us.
Yeah.
Because every day you're sort of problem solving different things, how to navigate a website, how to use some software or a new tool. And so, from my perspective, I think employers need to really seriously consider when somebody who's blind applies for a job, because they're coming in with a skill set and critical thinking and problem solving skills that are really beyond compare. And
Yes.
when I look at our stellar staff and the skills and intelligence and abilities, a lot of times folks, I think that because your eyesight isn't working, that maybe there's some mental and developmental disabilities, when that in fact is not the case at all.
Oh, yeah.
And so there is no intellectual problem. It is simply that the vision isn't there, the eyesight isn't working. But it's really important that we notice and realize the enormous gifts and potential that are there and have always been there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What is the most important thing for someone to have access to when they begin losing their vision?
I would have to say the most important thing to have access to is information. And what comes from information is resources and mentorship, as I referred to earlier. You want to be able to have the support, whether that be physical support and having transportation to get from home to your doctor's appointments, or from home to Society for the Blind to take your classes. There's that kind of physical support, but the access to information to be able to educate yourself on blindness, maybe your particular vision loss, what's going on in the blind community. There's a few prominent organizations out there that are really there on the national level and the local level to kind of aid or assist and help support people experiencing vision loss or who are already blind. So it's really access to information. When you get the proper training, whether it be cane travel training, technology training, it's still access to information. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act, and a lot of people think that focuses on physical accessibility, when really everything in the blindness community comes back to access to information. That's what we want, is that access.
Yeah, awesome. I like the fact that you kind of chose that to be the most important thing to have access to, because if you don't have the information, then it's a slow start. It's a very slow start, but once you have that information, you kind of on your road to start living a quality of life. So resources, information, education is definitely key.
Absolutely.
In that process. And I also like, Sherry, how you spoke to the employer component of hiring people who may have vision loss or low vision, because I do agree that they are definitely problem solvers, and I see that with our volunteer. I'm serious, this guy is really sharp and very faithful, and so when you see that, I think people need to have an open mind to not judge or not, allow stigma to cloud their decisions, and just treat people fairly.
Correct.
So I'm glad that you brought that up. So let's talk a little bit about barriers and limitations that's in the blind community. Like, what are some of the barriers and limitations that people in the blind community face?
Well, I kind of touched on it earlier, and that is kind of the societal misconceptions of, what we experience when we're out there, or, and this could go into the workplace as much as it can, walking down the street to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
People see someone walk in with a long white cane, and they immediately start assuming that there are limitations to their life and to their abilities. When in reality, if you go to a quality training center like Society for the Blind, and you get involved in the blind community, and you equip yourself with the right resources and the right tools, then there's really, other than being a cab driver and a bus driver, there are a few things that blind people cannot do. Mm-hmm. I know blind people in almost every field, all the way from civil engineering to the medical field, to being lawyers, education, both at the university and elementary level. Nice. So that, it's a matter of getting yourself involved, and we tackle that every day with kind of trying to break down those societal misconceptions and try not to be marginalized due to our blindness or our vision loss.
Yeah, I think about, someone that does have a vision walking across the street. You wouldn't want anybody just grabbing you and assuming that you don't know your way or don't know which direction or know what you're doing. I mean, that, because they're crossing boundaries. So, it speaks the same language to people who may have a vision loss. It's not good to assume, but to ask questions and give them the option to, accept, help if needed. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you spoke on that.
I say it jokingly, but I often talk to other students and people in the community about if I'm standing at a stoplight, chances are I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And like we said earlier, all too often someone sees a blind person with a cane and they want to rush to help them, and it's not always necessary.
I want to kind of, because you mentioned that, I mean, you're married and you have children. Uh-huh. How for someone that may have lost their sight and may be, may desire to get married and have children, but may not have the hope to start a family. Speak on that a little bit, and because I'm trying to touch all angles.
Sure.
When people watch this show, what people can really know that you can live a life, regardless if you have your sight or not. So talk a little bit about having a family.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and not to sound like a broken record, but getting yourself immersed into the blind community is such a huge part of becoming comfortable with your blindness. Yeah. To the point where you can start establishing confidence. Yes. And get the skills necessary. Taking care of myself is one thing. I got myself through college, but taking care of a wife and two toddlers is a completely different story. Yes. So, talking to other blind parents who have successfully raised children and they've gone through school and into college, talking to those parents about, hey, how did you change a baby's diaper? How did you know if your baby had a diaper rash? Because there are answers to these questions. Mm-hmm. How do you monitor your child at the park? If I take my son out and we go to the park and play on the swings or on the slides, I have little jingle bells attached to his feet. Nice. He loves them. He loves them because he knows he doesn't have to hold my hand if he has those bells on. Yeah. So we don't walk out the door without the bells, and now I can track him and I can monitor him as we're walking down the park and as he's playing with his friends at the park. So finding out people who have had success with raising kids and figuring out what tools and strategies they use with their kids is such a huge part of it. And as far as, having a successful marriage, Sherry touched on it a moment ago when she was giving you a success story. As an individual, we want to be able to contribute to our marriage. So we have to be able to not only, bring home a paycheck, we got to be able to take the trash out like someone should, do the laundry like anybody should, pick up after ourselves like anybody can. So getting equipped with those tools to be able to manage yourself and manage a home is so critical to having a successful marriage, whether you're blind or not.
Exactly.
So, having that, having those abilities, you only get that if you go to a training center like Society for the Blind. Otherwise, you're always going to sit and wonder, how do I do A or how do I do B?
Exactly.
Well, you get the answers to those questions at Society for the Blind.
Nice. So how can someone access you guys' services?
So one of the probably easiest, most direct ways is through our website, and that's www.societyfortheblind.org. And so on the website, it talks about all the various programs that we have. There's a form you can fill out just for information. We get several of those daily. And then you can also call us at 916-452-8271.
Okay.
So, and certainly you can also walk in. We're located at the corner of 13th and S Streets, so 1238 S. So right in the kind of Midtown grid area.
Yeah, a big, beautiful building too.
Thank you.
Is there a cost associated with you guys' services?
So the way it works, Greg mentioned the Department of Rehabilitation. So when individuals reach out to us and come to us, what we will do is kind of a brief interview intake. And then what we will try to do for our working age adults is to connect them with the California Department of Rehabilitation, Blind Field Services, the specialized unit. And that will enable them to, if they get enrolled through the DOR, they help to underwrite some of the costs for the training, for the classes that they take. And it's probably an average of 2 years for an individual to learn all those basic 4 courses, and sometimes longer, depending on each individual. And so that's a portion of it. We have a low vision clinic. And through the low vision clinic, if you have insurance or Medicare, Medi-Cal, you can come in and avail yourself of our services. Typical to any doctor's office, there's copay and things like that.
Yeah.
Our budget is, as a nonprofit, about $3 million a year, and we fundraise 2/3 of that. So most of the costs associated to Society for the Blind are through our Ressler philanthropic resources.
Nice, nice. So I had a chance to see the clinic as well. So very beautiful. You guys got a lot going on there, for real. It's really amazing and impressive of what you guys are doing in that space. I want to talk about the clinic. What type of services that are there actually providing there at the clinic?
So in our low vision clinic, which was actually established 40 years ago,
Wow.
and it is currently the only low vision clinic, again, in the Northern California region. So all of the optometrists that work in our low vision clinic also did at least 1 year of residency in low vision eye care.
Nice.
We also have an ophthalmologist on our staff as well. And so when patients come into our low vision clinic, they already have a diagnosis of some eye condition, or they maybe have already lost significant vision. So our doctors are going to work with them, monitor that, and then also help them understand what are some of the devices and tools that might help them still use whatever remaining vision they have safely and effectively. We have an occupational therapist on staff, again, who specializes in rehabilitation for folks with vision loss. So she will work with the patients for several sessions, again, helping them if they want to continue to read, or maybe they still can navigate the kitchen safely. Part of the occupational therapy is to help that patient make that informed choice.
Yes.
Maybe I rely on my remaining sight to read or watch TV, but I'm going to take the independent living skills class that Society for the Blind offers because I know that I need to learn my non-visual skills in order to safely navigate my kitchen. So, the beauty of having those comprehensive services under one roof is it really helps our patients and clients to make those informed choices about the services and how they want to go on and continue to live their lives with some vision or perhaps no remaining vision. So that's where the low vision clinic really comes in handy and really helps people from the very maybe first start of losing vision to not having any usable vision. We also just recently got a mobile clinic through VSP, and so now we're able to take our clinic on the road, and our doctors,
nice.
our occupational therapists, and even instructors like Greg, we're able to go to the more northern parts of the state, more rural areas, and go to our clients and patients who can't maybe
Wow.
get down here because transportation is a huge barrier for folks to access services. And so having the ability to go on the road and take services out to individuals where they can learn their skills in the community where they live only adds extra benefit to those services and enables us to reach far more people.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I love about all this too, I like the fact that the clinical staff has some form of training on the services that you guys are providing. And I say that because, I'll use this, my mom, a lot of older adults, when they go and see their primary care physicians, they don't really know or they're not sensitive to their need. Earlier part of this year, I went to Chicago because my mom was having an emergency procedure done. And I remember up to that point, talking to her, and she was communicating to me over the phone. Well, I didn't really understand what the doctor was saying, or, the doctor just wasn't sensitive to what she was going through, her needs and different things like that. So when I did get up there and to the hospital with her, and I was really advocating for her, and not only just advocating for her, but for him to explain to her what it is that she's going through. A lot of medical terminology she wasn't understanding. I was really asking him to break it down for her, because this is your client. What you're saying is kind of above her head. So, I think it's important that the physician or clinical staff understand what the client is going through and have some form of training about what they're actually going through.
Yes, like I said, all of our doctors have specialized training in low vision eye care, and our appointments, our eye exam appointments, generally run an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Because the doctor is taking time to, one, the exams themselves can be longer, but then to explain what is going on, what our device is, and oftentimes family members accompany the patient into the room. So again, you're educating the entire family or the caregivers as well, so that people, and if they're getting new information, can be hard to absorb all of it at once. So it helps to have somebody else in the room that's hearing it, can maybe ask some follow-up questions, and we know, it takes some time to take that all in. So it is very important.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the store that you guys have. So you guys have so much going on, and it's a good thing.
Right.
But when is it open? Is it open? When does it close? What do you guys sell? How can a person access it? Can somebody off the street access it, or is it just for the people that get services provided to them? And let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so the retail store at Society for the Blind is open Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. It is open to the public, so anyone can come in and shop. If they have a family member that has vision loss, they can come in and get products, bring the family member in.
Nice.
Certainly our students and staff, everyone can shop there. And so it is a retail store that has adaptive products and devices, talking watches and clocks. We have contrast keyboards, so you might have a black keyboard with yellow keys or white keys. We have a number of CCTVs, which are large magnification devices that help individuals to be able to, who still have some vision, to see a document, make it large, change the color contrast. And again, all of the staff are trained so that they can demonstrate and really work with the person who's shopping for those materials. We have children's books. There are books, I believe they're called Twin Vision, if I'm correct, Greg, that are both, they have print, but they're also in Braille. So again, if the parent is blind, they can still read a children's book, and the
That's
book has
awesome.
pictures and print, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so because we serve from pediatrics through seniors,
Wow.
we have things in the store that are all for all the various age categories and cohorts. So, and of course we sell the various educational materials and supplies as well for our students.
Wow, very, very impressive. I know when I was giving a tour, the staff member, she kind of demonstrated a little bit of a couple of products, and it was very impressive. I was just like really blown away that you guys have all of that going on in that building. I know I've been heard of you guys and just kind of did a little research here and there, but when I came to kind of meet with you and your staff, I was like, okay, this is we got to do this show, because I mean this service is needed. Like people really need to know that you can live a quality life by accessing services from the Society for the Blind.
And we, are very grateful for this opportunity, because you really hit on it, which is so many folks don't know that Society for the Blind is available, and we're available in 27 counties in Northern California, and we don't want folks to have to get isolated or feel that fear and be alone, because there is a resource there. And so shows like this that help get the word out there, so that no matter what your age, or if you're the family member of somebody who's lost their vision, there is a place to go to get all the support and training you need to get back on your feet and live your life to the fullest.
That's awesome. If somebody wanted to donate to Society of the Blind, how would they be able to do that? Are there opportunities to donate?
Absolutely. Again, you can donate directly through our website, so www.societyfortheblind.org. We have various activities. We have mailers, so if you want to get on our mailing list, you can certainly do that. In 2015, we launched what's called Vision 2020. And that's a campaign to really strategically be prepared for the future. We know that there's a growing senior population, and there's a growing number of seniors who have vision loss. And so we want to be ready for the increase in need in our community. And so supporting program development is one piece of that campaign. We still have about 5,000 square feet to build out in our teaching center. We're hoping to build a teaching apartment into our building, so you can support the construction of that. And we're also establishing an endowment so that we can be here for 60 plus more years to come.
Nice.
And when new opportunities arise for programs or need, we're able to respond and be very nimble to meet the needs of the community as they arise.
Awesome. Are there any volunteer opportunities there for Society of the Blind?
Absolutely. I'll touch on it generally, and I think Greg has some more specific things. Certainly Access News, which is our telephone reader service. It's a 24-hour program. Folks call in and they can pick from a tree basically of different, could be news, could be sports, could be cooking, and listen to articles, and they're all read by volunteers.
Nice.
So you're not listening to a computerized voice, but rather it's people like you and me coming in and reading different things, ads from the various grocery stores and drug stores. And we are always in need of more volunteers to read publications. So that's a great opportunity. We have special projects and things that we do at Society, opportunities for companies to come in with a team that want to do some team building and can volunteer.
Nice.
And in our senior program, we actually have a whole mentor program, and it's people who've gone through the program who have vision loss and blindness who become mentors themselves. So we're always looking for graduates to come back and help us out. And then we have a couple upcoming activities that Greg is spearheading that could use some volunteers and participation.
Okay. Well, we got a couple of minutes. I want to talk about, I know you guys have some events coming up. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I want the community to kind of know about that.
So I'll turn it over to Greg.
Yeah.
Well, as Sherry just mentioned, this is what we're opening up the doors for volunteers for.
Okay.
On October 14th, we have our Youth and Family Resource Fair, and as we've kind of been talking about, resources are critical
Yes.
when you're experiencing vision loss or trying to stay in touch with the community. So we're inviting some of the local agencies down to Society for the Blind, like Department of Rehabilitation, Warm Line, National Federation of the Blind, California Council for the Blind, and many, many others, all that are involved in some degree into rehabilitation or the blindness community. So families in Northern California and the surrounding areas can come down and get in touch with these agencies so they know that they're out there, so they know that we're out there, and that they know that we can be a link to all of these agencies. So we certainly welcome families and those with youth who are blind, as well as all ages, to come down to Society for the Blind on October 14th. Now, following our event, which is from 10 to 2 o'clock, following our event, we're going to be going on a walk throughout Midtown and downtown, because some businesses in the community have brailled up some signs or some plaques to highlight their address and the name of their store throughout Midtown and downtown. Bagel Time at 1607 10th Street, that's one that is done, and different stores and businesses throughout. So our walk following our Youth and Family Resource Fair is going to be mapped out by the businesses who have labeled their addresses in Braille, and we'll go and check those out. And then on November 4th, we have our Paralympic Day experience. And again, we're opening this up to everyone in the community, as well as those involved with the National Fitness Challenge. If you notice, I have my Fitbit on. We've been participating in an event for the past 8 or 9 months called the National Fitness Challenge with the Anthem Foundation and the U.S. Association of Blind Athletes to help bring awareness of heart disease and diabetes and obesity to everyone in the blindness community, and try to encourage them to up their activity to 10,000 steps a day at least. And it's harder to get 10,000 steps a day than you think. But so we've been doing this, and it's all going to conclude with our Paralympic Day event. So we're going to be holding different activities, different workshops of sports that blind people participate in on a regular basis. I will be leading a judo seminar. We're looking to have other world champions in the sports of archery, rowing, goalball, and other sports. And so people in the community can come in and get to see what physical activities, what kind of exercises, what sports, whether you want to do it on a recreation or on a competitive level. These are activities that blind people can effectively participate in, both alongside their blind peers and their sighted peers. And they can have a good time doing it. We're doing that on November 4th.
Okay, thank you guys so much for all that you do in the community for the blind community, and we're running out of time. And that's it today for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, or if you have questions about this particular show, or if you want a DVD copy of this particular show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.
When I think of where I've been, the good times and the bad, on a scale of 1 to 10, either way I'm glad, 'cause I'm not alone. As I'm reaching for the phone, your voice is there, you really care, you're my comfort zone. Sometimes when I'm lost, crushed beneath the pain, though I can't afford the cost, I just smile and play the game. But there's a healing place where I cannot pretend. Your smiling face, your heart's embrace heals me again.